those who are watching, we're 10 minutes late. We had to update multiple programs. I appreciate Bill Blum giving me a heads up on that, and that we've never had to do that before. So we worked through it. The ladies here have been fellowshipping and talking about a special Easter service last night. So if you have your Bible open to Ezekiel 11, we're going to jump right in, and we're going to finish this chapter today. And I'll tell you, while you're watching and here in the room, we will do Ezekiel 12 next week. It's an incredible chapter about Ezekiel digging through the wall of his house in Babylon. I think you'll enjoy it. Then we'll break 1 week. Rochelle and I will be out of state, so the men and the women will be breaking, not next week, but the next one. Okay? Just give you a heads up today and then also next week. All right, let's start. Now, I'm going to do something to help you get the big picture. And by the way, interrupt me if you have a question. Just say a word, speak out, raise your hand. If I don't see your hand, say something. But remember the division of Ezekiel. Chapters 1 through 24, they are prophecies of God's judgment against Judah, the southern kingdom, and the capital city, Jerusalem. We are in Ezekiel 11 today. It's the end of a vision of the destruction of Jerusalem that begins in chapter 8. So it's 4 chapters long. We're finishing that vision today. Chapters 25 through 32 are prophecies against the nations around Judah. And I'll show you this in just a moment. And then the last 16 chapters, greatest chapters of Ezekiel, prophecies of hope and salvation through the new covenant. Very similar to Isaiah 40 through 55, to Jeremiah and his writings. But here's the cool thing. Today, in Ezekiel 11, you're going to get a glimpse of what Yahweh will be saying through Ezekiel in chapters 33 through 48. Now we're going to pull out a little bit. Like they say, sometimes you're looking at the tree so much you don't see the big picture. So let's pull out. Let me show you something. Everything we're talking about in Ezekiel happens right here. Here are the 2 rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. And you have Ezekiel living in Tel Aviv between the 2 rivers. And notice, they couldn't come from Jerusalem here because of the desert, so they had to go here. Now this is Persia. We call it Iran today. Our guys in Daniel are studying Persia conquering Babylon. But Ezekiel, we're not there yet in Ezekiel. It's just Iraq who is conquering this area. But this is a modern map to kind of give you a sense. Here's Turkey. By the way, Turkey is a member of NATO. Here is Russia. Most of the conflict that's going on in the world today is in the exact same area, with the addition of this area down here. This is where our aircraft carriers are right now. This is Yemen. Iran controls Yemen. So the United States Navy and Air Force have been bombing Yemen because they've kept people from shipping cargo through the Red Sea. These are Islamic terrorists. So shipping now has to go around Africa, Cape Horn. And that's why prices are going up for shipping. Okay, now, one other thing I'll show you here. Here's a world map. And what's fascinating is everything we're talking about is right here, the center of the world. Hey, Tel Aviv, Babylon. What did the Jews say of Tel Aviv? Babylon. What did they say about it? It was the original Garden of Eden. By the way, between the Tigris and Euphrates, those 2 rivers are mentioned in Genesis 1. Okay, now when God destroyed the world through the flood, Genesis 6, Noah and his 3 sons, what are their names? Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Let me show you something. All the capitals of the world in this area are named after Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Because the Hamites, do you know who the grandson of Ham was? The great-grandson of Noah? His name was Nimrod. Does anybody know what town Nimrod founded? Babylon. The Tower of Babel. You read about that. Does that make sense? Okay, so watch. The Babylonians are Hamites. The Shemites are the Israelites. And the Arabs. Because they come from brothers, Jacob and Esau. The Japhethites are Europeans. The world's population spreads from this area right here. From Sin. Sin is a grandson of Ham. And we get... Anybody know what the scientific name for China is? Sin. T-S-I-N. In other words, I can trace the world's populations through the spreading of the area that we're studying right now. Through Noah. By the way, a little sidelight, and Hazel, I won't blow your mind too much. But I'll say to you, anybody remember why the world was destroyed with the flood by God? Do you remember it says that the sons of God came to the daughters of men? Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. Then the sons of God came and had relations with them, and their descendants were the Rephaim, the giants of the land. Okay? Who were the sons of God? Divine entities, the counsel of God, in the invisible realm, and they went out of their ordained place and came to women, the daughters of men, and their descendants were giants in the land. Okay, think with me. Yes, who built the pyramids before the flood? The giants, with scientific knowledge. Before the flood, there was an understanding of science that will blow your mind. But the world was destroyed because of that integration of the sons of God with the daughters of men. By the way, if you go look at the Aztec ruins, the world was populated before the flood with, if you will, crossbreeds that built these extraordinary scientific engineered laboratories. The Great Pyramids were an energy center that gave power to an entire city underneath the ground. By the way, they just discovered the city not too long ago, the geologists and so on. And it's been written up in archaeology magazines and so on. But here's the deal. We couldn't even build the pyramids today with all of our heavy machinery and equipment. We don't have the technology. It was a power center. Electricity before the flood. Yeah, I know. Hazel's looking at me like crazy. Yeah, well, all I'll tell you is this. Don't take my word for it. Google it and follow the science. In other words, science is saying we can't explain it, so they're going to aliens from other planets. I'm saying the Bible tells you exactly why it happened. Yeah, go ahead.
Question about Nimrod. I know growing up, if you called somebody names like Nimrod, does that come from him?
It sure does. And by the way, you know definitively you grew up in a Christian home if you say you Nimrod, because I had heard the same thing. Yeah, that is exactly right. Nimrod and Nero. In fact, I had a friend who named his two pit bulls, Nimrod and Nero. All right, here we go. You all know this. Israel, the descendants of Shem, form a nation. God chose them to be a light to all the nations. But they failed. Because they failed, the northern kingdom of Israel is captured and scattered by Assyria in 722 BC. Then the southern kingdom of Judah, remember Israel split in 931 BC into two kingdoms. They had a civil war. They split over what issue? Taxes. Solomon died. His son Rehoboam wanted to tax the people more. In fact, it's recorded in Kings. You think my father oppressed you with taxes? You're going to be taxed more by me. So 10 tribes went north and established a new capital city in the northern kingdom of Israel called what? Samaria. But the capital of the southern kingdom remained what? Jerusalem. Okay. You're tracking. Now watch. This is where Ezekiel comes in. This is a great map, by the way. The only thing I disagree with is this date right here. This is 609, not 626. 609, when Babylon conquers Assyria, and we read it in the book of Kings and Chronicles. But this is the path that the Jews and the Assyrians were taken out of Jerusalem. The Jews and the Israelites taken out of Israel, first by the Assyrians in 722, and then by Babylon in 586. Ezekiel is born in 622 BC. Just keep that in your mind. He dies at the age of 52 in 570 BC. He's born in Jerusalem, the capital city of Judah, and he is being trained to be a what? A priest. So his father was a priest. Now, priests could marry in Jerusalem, but you weren't ordained a priest, set aside, until you were 30 years old. Well, Ezekiel was taken into Babylonian captivity at the age of 25 in 597. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and Daniel, they're already been in Babylon for 8 years in the king's palace. Ezekiel and 10,000 other Jews are taken in 597. So he's taken from the Temple Mount, where he's training to be a priest, and he goes to Babylon, taken there by Nebuchadnezzar. Now, that's important because when we read Ezekiel 11 in a moment, the people remaining in Jerusalem mock those people who have left. They mock them and say, oh, good for you, get out. Jerusalem is ours. You're not part of us. Well, this is the path that Ezekiel was taken on, and this is an important path because when Ezekiel arrives in Babylon 5 years later, instead of being a priest, God calls him to be a prophet. We've read about it, Ezekiel 1, 2, and 3. The incredible vision of the sapphire throne that you ladies taught me is blue. The sapphire throne with the rainbow, with the fire, the glory of God, with the wheels at the base that have eyes, and the angels, the cherubim, holding up the throne. It's a beautiful picture that Yahweh rules the world. And he's saying to Ezekiel, I'm calling you to give my word to your people because I'm about to come in judgment on my people. I'm divorcing them, for they have failed the covenant. And so Ezekiel acts out his first prophecy. For a year he lays on his side, by the side of the road. Doesn't bathe, doesn't shave. For another period of time shorter, he lays on the right side. People walk by, he cooks his food on feces, and people are thinking, this guy, he needs his medication. He's nuts. Okay, and then at the end he cuts his hair off and chops up a third of it, and then he burns a third of it, then he throws a third in the air, and then his scribe, either himself or a disciple or his wife, record in Hebrew on a scroll, Jerusalem, this is what's about to happen to you. A third of you are going to die by the sword, a third of you are going to be scattered to the winds, and a third of you will die by famine. And so, that scroll was sent back to Jerusalem. And the leaders read it to the people. Now this is important because Ezekiel 11 opens up. Several scrolls, by the way, have been sent and read probably, because it was only later that the scrolls were collated by Ezra and became the book you call Ezekiel. So the Jews would read it and get furious. Who is this nut? We've heard. He's by the side of the road. He's out of his mind. He's telling us Yahweh's going to destroy Jerusalem. Ignore him. We are the prosperous people. Build your houses. Yeah, God will take care of us. But by the way, all the while, they're establishing the gods of Babylon all over the temple. And they are worshiping those gods. By the way, those gods, you say they're idols. But the Tower of Babel was built to represent the ancient knowledge that people had intercourse with the gods. And by the way, this is what mythology is all about. Isaac Newton once said, before you discount mythology, you need to understand it's just a corruption of the truth. Okay? So here we go. In Ezekiel 8, he gets, after a year and a half of being on the side of the road, now he's in his house with his wife and the elders, the older men who are in exile from Jerusalem. And he has this incredible vision where he's pulled by the hair in his vision, taken to Jerusalem, and he sees the idols that the princes of Jerusalem have established. The idol of Nabu, the idol of Marduk, the Ishtar, and then all the women who need to be pregnant are praying to the god Ishtar and going through the rituals that the Babylonians did. That have its roots in the Tower of Babel. And the people were supposed to be trusting Yahweh. And so, in the vision, Ezekiel is told to tell the people, the 4 horsemen are coming to Jerusalem. Death, famine, war, pestilence, and plague. By the way, if you think the 4 horsemen is only for the future, every nation who rebels finds the 4 horsemen come. But in the vision, Ezekiel is shown by Yahweh that there's a man in linen, the son of man in linen, with a writing utensil around his waist. And he's marking his people, those who trust Yahweh and are not idolaters, with the Tau. Tau is the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And remember, here it is right here. The Tau. That's the modern Tau. But in Ezekiel's day, it was the older Tau. It was early Hebrew, Middle Hebrew, and it was the cross. So the people saved from the 4 horsemen had the cross on their forehead. And Aleph is the first Hebrew letter. Bet is the second. We get our word alphabet from it. I am the Aleph and the Tau. The man in linen is. He saves his people. Okay, now we end the vision today with Ezekiel 11 by showing you accountability that comes to the leaders who are in Jerusalem. These are the ones who discounted Ezekiel. These are the ones who didn't hear the Lord. These are the ones who were worshiping idols. They are the false prophets, the princes, the leaders of Jerusalem. And we're going to see what happens to them in Ezekiel 11. Any questions before we continue? That's a review. How many times you have to hear it? 70. There's one prophet. Oh, by the way, I keep saying there's one prophet that told the people, listen to Ezekiel. What was his name? Jeremiah. Let me qualify that, Rochelle. There's one prophet who said, listen to Jeremiah, and lived. Anybody know what happened to the other prophets who said, listen to Jeremiah? They killed them. They killed them. This is what Jesus referred to. They killed them, and then they just let their bodies rot in the streets. Pretty bad, isn't it? All right, let's start reading. Ezekiel 11, verse 1. Moreover, the Spirit lifted me up. And remember, he's in his house in Babylon. So the Spirit lifts him up to the east gate of the Lord's house, which faced eastward. Okay, let me show you a picture here so you get. It's a vision. Let me show you something. Go to the last verse, verse 25. If you're the average person reading the Bible, look at verse 25. Then I told the exiles all the things the Lord had shown me. After the vision, he tells the exiles everything the Lord had shown him, which means they didn't see the vision like Saul on the road to Damascus. He's the only one that saw the light. He's the only one that heard the voice. And he had to tell the people. He went blind. He had to tell the people what happened. Same thing here. Ezekiel's the only one who sees the vision. But you would never understand verse 25. Then I told the exiles all the things that the Lord had shown me. Unless you knew the context, huh?
What chapter is that?
11.
Oh, I thought you were going back to...
No, 25. 11:25.
Okay.
Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, Rochelle, who are the exiles?
Well, the people that were taken to Babylon.
Correct. My point is, you don't know these are the people with Ezekiel in Babylon unless you know the context and the historical accuracy of Ezekiel 11. But, I mean, this is why going through stuff like we go through is important, because then the Bible pops. So the vision we're about to read, only Ezekiel sees. It's in his mind. Then he tells them, verse 25, what he has seen. And Catherine, it's recorded on a scroll and sent back to be read in Jerusalem. Okay, let's go on. Verse 2. Verse 1, middle. And behold, there were 25 men at the entrance of the gate. All right, what gate? Right there, east gate. By the way, this is going to be important for what we're about to read. There's a mountain right here. There's a little valley that when you went out the east gate after the Last Supper, Jesus went out the eastern gate, crossed the Kidron Valley, and went to where? The Mount of Olives. At the base of the Mount of Olives is the Garden of Gethsemane. That Gethsemane means olive press. Then you can climb the mountain and build. How many times have you done? Twice? At least. Yeah. We've been up on the Mount of Olives. You're looking down over the temple. And by the way, this is where Jesus in Matthew 24 told his disciples, look, Yahweh's going to destroy this temple, but in 3 days I will rebuild it. He's, of course, talking about himself. He's the temple of the living God. But they're looking at the temple, which was true. It was going to be destroyed. They're like, how can this be destroyed? How can every stone be torn down? And the Romans did that in AD 70, just like the Babylonians did it in 586. The temple was rebuilt by the Jews and rededicated in 516 BC, but it wasn't near as nice as Solomon's temple. Herod remodeled it, and the Romans tore it down, just like what we're about to read the Babylonians would do in 586. All right, last half of verse 1.
So
yeah.
These are the same 25 men from verse 8 that had their backs,
Excellent question.
or not?
According to John Gill, the answer is no, they're not. Those 25 men, in fact, that's chapter 8, Gill says are priests who are in the temple ground. These are princes who are government leaders. That's a great question, though. These are political leaders. These are the princes. These would have been like Daniel, who was a prince. The other 25 in chapter 8 are like Ezekiel, who would have been priests. Great question, man. All right, let's go on. So, I saw 25 men at the entrance of the gate, and then he sees two people of the 25. Jaazaniah, son of Azur, and Pelatiah, son of Benaiah, leaders of the people. Notice, not priests, leaders, princes. That's the word princes there, of the people. And then Yahweh said to me, Son of man, these are the men who devise iniquity and give evil advice in this city, who say, the time is not near. Okay, what time? The time is not near. Go ahead and build your houses.
Destruction.
Bingo. See, in other words, the first scroll, or several scrolls from Ezekiel, have already been sent, warning of destruction. Jeremiah had warned of destruction. He was older, but he had also warned. Habakkuk had warned. Other prophets had warned. These were the prophets of Yahweh. Destruction is near. These leaders say, don't listen to these prophets. They're wrong. Destruction is not near. Go ahead, build your houses. This city is the pot, and we are the flesh. Meaning, this city is protected, and we got all the meat, we got all the money, we got every pleasure we need. Remember what the Israelis said when they left Egypt under Moses' leadership? They get out in the desert and they said, could we not go back where we had flesh pots of meat? Could we not go back to Egypt? They didn't like. Flesh pots, pots of meat, are a picture of prosperity. So what the leaders are saying is, ignore the prophets. This city of Jerusalem is the pot, we are the flesh. And now Yahweh says, by the way, there should be an end quote at the end of verse 3, because that's the leaders who are speaking. Now Yahweh says to Ezekiel in the vision, therefore prophesy against them, son of man, prophesy. Are you tracking with me? Now let me show you something that's kind of cool. Only 2 of the 25 are mentioned. Hazel, some say that the 2 who are mentioned because Ezekiel knows them. Maybe, but look at the meaning of their name. Jaazaniah, remember Hebrews right to left. This is Yah. Jaazaniah means Yahweh hears. Pelatiah means Yahweh delivers. Now, this is pretty interesting. The judgment is coming to the princes because they don't hear Yahweh. And the judgment is coming to the princes in the form of destruction. So the 2 men named, Yahweh hears, Yahweh delivers, but the people don't hear Yahweh, and the people doesn't deliver, he destroys. So I think that the 2 men are mentioned because of the meaning of their names. Make sense? Any questions?
Are their fathers Hazar and Benaiah somewhere else? We would know who they are.
Great question. I'll have to look that up. The question is, their fathers, are they mentioned other places in Scripture? Do we know who they are? And I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm going to look at it.
One reason I ask is because I always had a student named Benaiah, and I just wondered why they chose that.
Oh, interesting. I'll look that up. By the way, Benaiah, Benaiah, Ben means son. So Anaiah means trust in Yahweh. So it would be son of the man who trusts in Yahweh. So it's a good name. By the way, these are good names. It's just an illustration that they're not doing what their character, their name, calls them to do. Verse 7. Then he brought me to the entrance of the court, and when I looked... excuse me. What verse? 5, sorry, thank you. Then the Spirit of Yahweh fell upon me, and he said to me, this is what you say. In other words, verse 4, he said, prophesy against these leaders. Now I'm going to tell you what to tell them. Thus says Yahweh. Notice, all caps, L-O-R-D, this is God's name. Thus says Yahweh. So you think, house of Israel, for I know your thoughts. Okay. Look at this. So you think, house of Israel, I know your thoughts. Do you remember, people have said to me before, Jesus is not Yahweh. He's just a man. He is not Yahweh in the flesh, Emmanuel, God with us. And I say, listen, the greatest evidence that Jesus is Yahweh in the flesh is that he knew the thoughts of people before they even spoke. You see this in the Gospels. This is Yahweh, the Spirit of Yahweh. Okay, you're thinking, Israel, I know your thoughts. Verse 6. You have multiplied your slain in this city, filling its streets with them. What does this mean? These are the prophets that are killed. These are innocent people who are murdered. This is injustice. And you fill them in the streets. Verse 7. By the way, Jews were to bury them. But the ancients had a tradition, the ancient pagan nations, that you mocked the people who died and their families by leaving them to rot in the streets. Therefore, verse 7, thus says Adonai Yahweh, your slain whom you have laid in the midst of the city are the flesh, and this city is the pot. In other words, you're saying, false prophets, false leaders, you're saying we're a city of prosperity. Let me tell you where the meat is. The meat is in the dead laying in your streets. In other words, this is what's going to happen to you. Judgment is coming. Your slain whom you have laid in the midst of the city are the flesh. This city is the pot. But I will bring you out of it. Okay, what does that mean? I'm going to show you this in just a moment. Rather than dying in the city, I'm going to bring you out of it, and you're going to die on the borders. And I'll show you the fulfillment of it. Verse 8. You have feared a sword, so I will bring a sword upon you. Adonai Yahweh declares. By the way, put a star there, underline it, and I'm going to give you a principle that's verse 8. I'm going to give you a principle you ought never forget. And you can use it in counseling with someone who doesn't trust Yahweh. There's a verse in the scripture that says, it's in the book of Job, that which I have feared the most has come upon me. Among the wicked, the very thing you fear is the thing that comes upon you. And the principle is found here in verse 8. You have feared a sword. I will bring a sword upon you. Now, this is only for the wicked. In other words, the destruction of the wicked occurs by the very thing they fear.
Whose sword have they feared?
Great question. Rochelle says, whose sword have they feared? The Chaldeans. So, the Babylonians. So, here's what they did, Rochelle. They sent to Egypt for help. Okay, they sent messengers down. Will you help us? We are fearing the mighty Babylonians. And Egypt. And, we need you. We don't need Yahweh. We need you. So one of the reasons, Rochelle, some people said idolatry became rampant, was to show the Babylonians, look, we're part of you. Don't kill us. Does that make sense? So they're doing everything they can because they fear the Babylonians. But now I'm going to bring a sword upon you. What sword does Yahweh bring upon them? The Babylonians. The very thing they fear. By the way, politicians fear the people turning against them. Guess what happens? People turn against them. That's probably why I would never have made a good politician. Because I didn't care what people thought. But that's how politicians are brought down. Rich people, what do they fear? Losing their wealth. What happens? They lose their wealth. This is among the wicked. Principle. Make sense? Any questions? Verse 9.
It's the things you value.
Ah, there you
The
go.
one-
clutch to.
Yeah, but the one thing you can't lose should be the thing that you value.
Thank you, Catherine. Man, that would preach right there. Yeah. The things you value, you lose. The one thing you can't lose and value, that's where the Lord's bringing you. Verse 9. And I will bring you out of the midst of the city, deliver you into the hands of strangers, and execute judgments against you. And you will fall by the sword. I will judge you to the border of Israel, so you shall know that I am Yahweh. Now let me show you what this means. This is a prophecy, by the way. And it's given about Ezekiel's called in 590 BC at the age of 30 to be a prophet in Babylon. For the first year and a half until 598, he does his first prophecy lying on the road and his hair and all that. Now he's sitting in his house, probably 588, at the age of 32, and he has this vision. The vision is fulfilled 2 years later, in July of 586, when the walls are breached with stones, catapults, by the Babylonians in Jerusalem. So all the people run through the breaches in the wall, and they try to escape. Babylon has surrounded Jerusalem. So what they do is they take the old road to Jericho. We've been on that road, remember that? It's all downhill. They run downhill, and then they go north, and they're captured by Babylonians. And they're brought. Zedekiah is brought to Riblah, where Nebuchadnezzar has parked with his entourage and sent his soldiers. He relaxes. There are springs here. Like, he's not going to be in the battle. He's going to be there sending his generals and battalions to do the battle. So when all the leaders of Israel, by the way, leaders of Israel, are caught, they're taken to Riblah. And that's where they are executed by the sword. The rest of the people continue their journey to Babylon under Babylonian soldier watch. And remember the story of Zedekiah, you read it in Chronicles. Zedekiah was king, and all the princes that were with him, his boys were killed, from the youngest to the oldest, by Nebuchadnezzar. Soldiers, they killed him with the sword. And then for Zedekiah, they said, we're not going to take your life. We're going to gouge your eyes out and blind you. So the last thing you see are those who should have been king of Judah, your sons, dying. And then we're going to drag you to Babylon, which they did, where Zedekiah, king of Judah, died. But all the other princes, Hazel, all the other leaders, they died at Riblah, on the border of the nation of Israel. And Riblah was the border. This was a prophecy. 586. It happened 2 years later. Questions? Bless you, baby. Any questions? Make sense? All right, let's continue. Which verse are we on? 11? Yep. This city shall not be a pot for you, nor will you be flesh in the midst of it, but I will judge you to the borders of Israel. Thus you will know that I am Yahweh. You have not walked in my statutes, nor have you executed my ordinances, but you have acted according to the ordinances of the nations around you. Now it came about, as I prophesied, that Pelatiah, son of Benaniah, died. Then I fell on my face and cried out with a loud voice and said, Alas, Adonai Yahweh, will you bring the remnant of Israel to a complete end? By the way, the question is this. Since it's a vision, did Pelatiah die in the vision, or did Pelatiah actually die? Does that make sense? Yeah, it's a great question.
I bet he died later.
He did die. The question is because it's a vision, Hazel, and it's taken.
I bet it was
Later. Good point. And you know what? I can see that. Might have been later.
It says, while I was prophesying, he died. So
Yeah, that's true.
maybe he died as he was prophesying.
Well, remember, though, how does he prophesy? The only way he prophesies, look at verse 25, he tells the people what he sees because they're not seeing it. They record it, and then they send it back. So I kind of lean toward what Hazel's saying, but April, you've put something on it. I think you're right, too. I think what happens is, as this is being read to the people, he dies.
Isn't he saying what he sees as he's seeing it to the people that are sitting there?
Yes. Afterwards, he sees the vision, and verse 25 says, after he sees it, he tells the exiles what he saw. Then it's recorded, then it's sent. That's why I agree that as he is prophesying to the people through the reading of the scroll,
So he was personal friends with Pelatiah. Is that why?
well, that's what John Gill says. John Gill says he was personal friends with Pelatiah and the other. That's why they're named. Could be. I think they're named because of the meaning of their names. Okay, let's go on. Verse
He
14.
just seems in distress at his death.
Oh, no, he does. No, yeah, right. Good point, Rochelle. Rochelle says he seems in distress at Pelatiah's death in the vision. Great point. Yeah, so he's close, a friend, he knows him. And then he says, will all the remnant of Israel be brought to a complete end? By the way, let me ask a question. The remnant of Israel, what does that mean? Anybody take a guess? No right, wrong answer. What is the remnant of Israel?
The
Ones
scattered
who didn't
ones.
There we go. Correct.
worship idols.
Yes. Northern Israel's gone. You're right. The remnant is Judah. The exiles are gone. The remnant is left. Are all of the remnant of Israel in Judah, in Jerusalem, are they all going to die?
But it looks like if he thinks about the man in linen where he put the cross on
He
his
would have
chest,
known.
He would have known they're not all
He
gonna die.
would have known.
But even his earlier prophecy where, yes, he said the third will die by the sword and that. He said, take that remnant.
Good
put it
point,
in
April. You and Ann are bringing it out. Even in the earlier prophecy, he says a remnant will be scattered and not all die. And Ann's saying he's already told about the ones that marked with the cross. Great point. So he cries out, will you bring the remnant of Israel to a complete end? And both of you are saying, well, other visions obviously say he's not. But now we come in answer to this request to a beautiful passage. Verse 14. Then the word of Yahweh came to me saying, Son of man, your brothers, your relatives, your fellow exiles, and the whole house of Israel, all of them, are those to whom the inhabitants of Jerusalem have said, go far from Yahweh, this land has been given to us as a possession. Now let me pause right there and say two things. Son of man, used 90-something times for Ezekiel. Son of man, son of man, son of man. Tim Taylor made an excellent point Tuesday in our Daniel Bible study. When we come to Daniel chapter 7, the Ancient of Days is one who looks like the Son of Man. Now think with me. Most modern Christians read back into that. That's somebody that looks like Jesus Christ. But the only Son of Man that Daniel would have known would have been Ezekiel. And when you put yourself in the context, then the Son of Man, Ezekiel, that in Daniel's vision, good night, this guy reminds me of Ezekiel. Food for thought. By the way, I don't think that's too far off from what Jesus would have looked like. The Bible says he was not handsome or had a beautiful appearance that people would long to be with him. In other words, he probably would have been like the original Son of Man, Ezekiel, in look. Son of Man. The people in Jerusalem have said, that's verse 15, to you and the exiles, get away from Yahweh. This land is ours. They're mocking the exiles in verse 15. Verse 16. Therefore, say, thus says Adonai Yahweh, though I had removed them far away among the nations, and though I had scattered them among the countries, yet I was a sanctuary for them a little while in the countries where they had gone. Therefore, says Adonai Yahweh, the Lord God, I will gather you from the peoples and assemble you out of the countries among which you have been scattered, and I will give you the land of Israel. Now watch this. Here's what's being said. The people in Jerusalem are saying of the exiles and those scattered, get out. We are the prized possession of Yahweh. This is our city. You obviously don't know the Lord like we do. But the Lord says to Ezekiel, I'm with you. I'm your sanctuary. By the way, this is what we saw in Ezekiel 1 through 3. Yahweh appears in Babylon. And the ancient concept was that the God of a nation only appeared in the temple. Well, here's Yahweh in Babylon. And then he makes the promise. Yes, I have scattered you, but I'm going to bring you all back, and I'm going to give you the land of Israel. Now, here is a fundamental Gordian knot that you're going to have to untie yourself. And I would not let anybody tell you what it means. I tried to figure it out for yourself. Here's the Gordian knot. Catherine, some preachers insist and are dogmatic that that promise of receiving the land of Israel has not yet happened. That this will happen in the tribulation, or it happened in 1948, and all the idols, this is future, if you will. Others, like myself, will say, this happened when Cyrus, king of Persia, freed the Babylonians. They went back and took the land and cast out all the idols. Now, you're going to have to figure it out yourself, because a lot of preachers will tell you this is about the end time and it hasn't happened yet. I'm telling you it happened when Cyrus freed the Jews from their Babylonian captivity, and they came back and rebuilt the temple, cast out the idols, and so on. Verse 19. And I will give them one heart, put a new spirit within them. I will take out the heart of stone out of their flesh and give them a heart of flesh, or that is, a soft heart, so that they may walk in my statutes and keep my ordinances and do them. That they will be my people, and I will be their God. But as for those whose hearts go after their detestable things and abominations, I will bring their conduct down on their heads, declares Adonai Yahweh. Now, watch this, because we've got to finish. We're going to finish the paragraph. Two beautiful things you've got to see. And I'm in agreement with Bill. After the Jews are released from Babylonian captivity, they come back and rebuild the city, rebuild Jerusalem and their houses. There's a difference in their relationship with Yahweh. It's all of trust. But some try to go back to the traditions of the ancients and go through their ritualistic worship. And that's not what God is calling them to do in this text. I'll be your God wherever you are. You trust me. Because, Bill, they go back to their ordinances. What is true about temple worship after the Babylonian exile?
The ark wasn't there.
The ark wasn't there, and the glory of God didn't come down into the temple. Ichabod had been written. So this becomes that personal relationship with Yahweh. Okay, let's go on. And by the way, if you say, wait, how do you know that? How do you know after the Babylonian exile? It's all about personal trust. It's not the ritualism of Jewish Orthodox worship in a rebuilt temple. How do you know that? Because of what happens in this final paragraph. Let me show you. Then the cherubim lifted up, and their wings with the hills beside them, and the glory of God of Israel hovered over them, and the glory of Yahweh went up from the midst of the city and stood over the mountain which is east of the city. What mountain is east of the city? Where was Jesus Christ crucified? Mount of Olives. So here you have Ichabod written over the city, the temple, and the cherubim, the throne, moves east, crosses the Kidron Valley, and stands above the mountain. It's almost as if you have this beautiful vision, even though Ezekiel might not have understood everything. Here is where the glory really is. Trust me. Now let's go on. Verse 24. And the Spirit lifted me up and brought me in a vision by the Spirit of God to the exiles in Chaldea. Chaldea is another name for Babylon. It's like Cherokee for Indian. It's the major tribe of the Babylonians, the Chaldeans. So the vision that I had seen left me. The vision disappears. Then I told the exiles all the things that Yahweh had shown. That's the glory. And it left the eastern gate and resided on the Mount of Olives. It stood still. And when Jesus Christ was crucified, he was taken out the eastern gate, up the road to the Mount of Olives. And that's where the glory of Yahweh died for sinners like us. Trust Yahweh, not your own works, and live. That's the message of Easter. Next week, Ezekiel chapter 12. You'll love that story. It's a new prophecy. Hopefully this has given you more insight into Ezekiel 11. God bless y'all. Thank you for watching.
How many